Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get started here because Excel is a beast of a topic to talk about. So we're going to get started talking a little bit of an introduction to Excel. I believe I know everybody on the call. If not, my name's Faith. I'm the Director of Outreach and Technology at the Community Action Partnership of North Dakota. We provide training and technical assistance. And this year we started doing a series of tech talks where we get together and we just casually chat about technology related topics in a non-judgmental, friendly way, because technology can be scary. So we want to make sure that you guys are prepared for the job that you guys do. So for the month of June, we're going to be talking about Excel. As I said, it's kind of a beast. So we're going to start off with just some basics, and then we're going to pull up a spreadsheet and start walking our way through a few things. So to get started, we're going to talk about what Excel is and what Excel isn't. Many of you are familiar with Microsoft Excel. It is a spreadsheet software program that allows users like you guys to organize data, calculate data, format data, get stuff in there. Spreadsheets are arranged data in a series of rows and columns, and they're really great for crunching numbers, doing budgets, organizing information, doing things. The one thing that I want to make clear to everybody is Excel is not a database. This is not where you want to put all of your data. For example, your agencies use CAP60. That's a data management database where you put things. It allows you to, databases allow you to track and organize information in a very highly flexible way, allowing you to do more with your data than just like crunching numbers and things. So if anyone ever says Excel is a database, they are wrong. Excel is not a database.
I love you, Faith.
Thank you, Rachel. I have this picture. Excel is not a database, printed off and stuck on my door back there. Because I have worked many places and I have experienced Excel being used as a database. So what I will tell you is Excel is great for gathering information, doing calculations, sorting things out. And the more you get to know Excel, the more you can use it to do things like play and programs like Power BI, which we're not going to talk about today because Power BI can be incredibly scary if you don't know a lot about Excel. So first, we're going to talk some terminology. Some of you might be familiar with this terminology. Some of you might call things something else. I'm going to use the terminology that was taught to me when I learned all about Microsoft from Microsoft, although I may supplement in some terms that I learned when I was teaching other people how to use spreadsheets because it just made more sense. So first thing we're going to talk about is the Excel ribbon. So when you open Microsoft Excel and you open any spreadsheet, a blank one you've been working on, at the very top, it's the menu. It's got tabs and icons that will allow you to find information in your spreadsheet, use commands to complete certain actions, format things. They call this the ribbon now. Most people just refer to it as a menu. But if you're working with somebody and they are a Microsoft person, they will probably call it the Excel ribbon. They just mean the menu at the top. We're going to play around with some of the things up at the top in the menu when we get to opening up a spreadsheet and looking at it. But I will probably refer to it as the menu and not the ribbon. When we're looking at Excel, Excel is when you open a file, it's called a workbook. So an Excel file is a workbook, and all of the workbooks contain one or more worksheets. So if you think of a workbook, you can think of it like a regular book. So you have your book, and each page in that book is a worksheet. In Excel, you'll see that the sheets are organized on the bottom in tabs, and they're displayed together. So in my really poor screenshot, they're just labeled sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. You can relabel them. So maybe I want to do January, February, March, April. I can go down and rename them. This way, you don't have to create a workbook each new month when you're doing the same data collection or the same thing. Like I make my budget in a spreadsheet because I'm old school. So when I'm at home and I pull it up, I'll have January 2023, February 2023. Instead of making separate Excel files or separate workbooks, I'm putting them all in one workbook. I would say like one workbook, and then each page is a month. So that way I don't have to go find different workbooks. I can just use one, open the file, share it with people. In your worksheet, you're going to see cells. The cell is the intersection of a column and a row. It's basically where you enter your data. So the little rectangle box, square box, however you have it formatted, that box they call a cell. We're going to talk about cells on the next slide and a little bit about how to know what cell you're actually in, what your active cell is, how to figure out where you are. Because some spreadsheets can be like one worksheet in a workbook. That worksheet could be 14,000 cells long. And you might be scrolling and you don't know which cell you're at. So first place you can look when you're on a spreadsheet and you're trying to figure out what cell you're at is up in the name box. The name box is located up at the top corner, and it'll show you the active cell that you are in by telling you, I call them the cell address. So it's like home. So this active cell is A1. So it's showing you A1. So if you were ever in a spreadsheet and you can't find where you are, you can just look at this box and it'll tell you what cell or column and row you're in. You can also tell what your active cell is. That's a currently selected cell because it is surrounded by a green box. I have found no way to make that green box brighter or bigger or more beautiful. It's just a green box. And if you have a lot of cells on your worksheet that have like green on them, you can lose your active cell. So that's why I tell people, if you can't find your green box, go up here, look at the name box, find out what cell you're in. The cell reference, I call it the cell address because I like to think of everything as houses. If you guys remember my very first SharePoint training, I talked about it like it was a house. I think of everything like houses. I don't know why. So every cell has an address or a cell reference, and it is the set of coordinates located on your spreadsheet where that cell is located. So the first character is going to be a letter, and that is the letter of the column. So in this case, this cell address starts with column A, so it's A, and then it's made up the row number. So this is A1. So this cell over here where my mouse is, this would be D2. It's important to know what the cell address or cell reference is when you start creating things like formulas. Because if you don't know the correct makeup of your cell address, it'll mess up calculating things or it won't work at all. So these are just some very basic things when you get started with Excel. When you go into Excel, it's important to know. You can create multiple worksheets, what cells are, and how to identify where you're at. When we pull up the spreadsheet, we're going to start talking formulas and things like that. You're going to input information like values, maybe you're just putting in a date or a number, or formulas and what they call the formula bar. So it's at the top right below the ribbon. And that's where you're going to enter your specific information. So in this example, I entered in a formula, but maybe you are keeping track of a list of names. You could put someone's name in here. Or maybe you're making a list of months. You could put the month in there. So this is where you're going to enter in all of your data for each cell. Think of it like a text box or like a itty bitty Word document inside your Excel. That's where you're typing things in. My favorite thing about Excel, other than pivot tables and streamlines and charts and things, are formulas. They're just equations and cell references or functions that you can put in to produce some sort of value in your cell. A common one people use when they're creating budgets, they add things up. So they use this particular formula. They'll put it in the formula bar, they'll type it out, and it'll populate, in this case, the total when you add up all the cells A1 through B6. So that's the basic terminology. We're going to go out and we're going to pull up an Excel workbook because this is the best way to learn Excel. If you are uncomfortable with Excel, create a blank workbook and play. You can't break the whole program. Go out to a workbook and play. So if you want to, while we're going through all this, play in a spreadsheet, I would recommend pulling one up. For me, I'm going to use the web version of Excel. That is usually found, I would go to Microsoft, the Microsoft.com, select Excel and open it up. If you have it on your computer, you would just go and find it. A lot of people have it pinned to their little window guy like I do, and you would just open Excel. I'm going to show you the two side by side first so you can see. Right now, Microsoft is trying to make their web versions and their Windows clients look exactly the same, if it'll open. I don't know if you guys were at my Teams Tech Talk. There were a lot of Microsoft issues on that day. Today is no different. They pick the day that I'm doing things. It's great. Love Microsoft. So here is what the client looks like. As you can see, when you compare it, they look practically identical. You have the same kind of commands, same kind of functions. The only difference is you'll see that here I am in a browser window with other tabs open, and here I am just in the client Excel workbook. So whichever you're more comfortable with, I like to work in the cloud. So that's the web version, and I do everything out there. It allows me to do things from any computer that I'm on, as long as I'm logged in as me. If you are using the web version and you're not sure if you're logged in as you can go up in the right-hand corner and it's going to show either if you have a profile picture like mine, my pretty face, or it'll show you your initials. This will make sure that you're logged in as you. If you use somebody else's computer, they might be logged in and you would be using it as them. And you might be saving things in there like OneDrive or things where you want it to be. So make sure you're logged in as you. So here we are, Excel. We're going to go to sheet 1, which is big and empty. Down at the bottom, here are those worksheets and our big workbook. And here is our ribbon. I'm going to zoom in a smidger bit on these cells so you can see what I'm doing. So down here on the bottom, the first thing I'm going to, I don't know if that helped at all, but we're going to find out if it worked at all. Down on the bottom, what we're going to do is rename our worksheets. Some people don't know how to rename them, so their worksheets just end up being sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 5. All the sheets just jumping in your sleep. Instead of seeing Baba sheets, you're seeing Microsoft Excel sheets over and over again. Sometimes I dream about them. I have problems. So what you're going to do is you're going to go down. The easiest way is just to right click on the sheet and you'll see some commands that come up. You can just click rename. And then you can rename the sheet to whatever you want. I'm going to rename it sheep 1. I don't know why, just felt like doing it. Once you've figured out what you want to rename it, maybe you're sorting your data by months, maybe you're sorting it by years, maybe you're sorting it by people. So maybe you have a group of people that report to you and you want to keep track of some information. You could put their initials or their full name and you could track it like that. So whatever you rename it as, you just type it in, click OK. And now you'll see at the bottom, I renamed it. It's now sheep 1. Let's say that I want to change the color of the tab. So I have trouble with differentiating if they're all the same color on things. So I don't want to mistake sheet 3 and sheep, Baba sheep 1. You can change the color of each tab. So you just click on the tab, go to tab color, and you can pick a color. So I'm gonna pick this color. So you'll see that now this tab is a different color than all the rest of the colors. In most of the spreadsheet templates that I've provided people, I usually do this at the bottom. It's a little bit more accessible for people who have difficulty differentiating text like I do. I like to put in the colors, so it's a little bit more helpful. If that's helpful for you, think of a color scheme that works best for your spreadsheet and have at it. If you need to add another worksheet, so let's say you have, May, June, July, August, but now you need September and you need to add another one, super easy. You're just going to click the plus sign at the bottom and it'll create a new tab for you. In this case, it called itself sheet 1. So I'm going to have to go back in, rename it. I named that one black sheet. Pretty nice, right? And I can go and change the tab color. If you change it to a darker color, depending upon if you have things in light mode or dark mode, that color may change. I've left mine in light mode for you guys. I generally function in dark mode. I'm a gremlin, but the default is light mode. So that is worksheets, how to add a worksheet, how to change the name, how to change the color. Now we're going to come back up to here and we're going to talk a little bit more about the cell. So we talked about the cell address or the name box, whatever it is. So here we are in B4. If you see me here, this is my active cell. You see that green box. Wherever that green box is, that's where I'm going to start entering data. So if I don't know where I'm at in this gigantic book of numbers, I can come up here and look at the name box to figure out where I'm at. The other thing that you can do with the name box is enter something in. So let's say I want to be cell M10. I'm going to do M10 and it's going to move my active cell to M10. So if you know the cell address or the cell reference you want to be in, you can just type it in that little name box. It'll pop you right there. I do this when somehow I have ended up at the bottom of a spreadsheet. Don't know how I got there. I know how I got there, but I will pretend that I don't know how I got there. I'll just come up here and I'll just type like V2, not V2, B2, so that it'll take me back to the top. There are other ways to get back to the very, very top of a cell. There are different commands. I have these handy dandy stickers that I got free with a laptop and got free with a little like stand that have the shortcuts for things like Word and Excel on them. You can find them online. If you are interested but are like me and have poor memory and can't remember all of the kind of commands that you can use, the quick keys, this is a great thing to get. Or you can make your own on a piece of paper and then like stick it to your computer so that you can remember what those commands are. A lot of them are kind of self-explanatory. Like if you know the commands for copy and paste, Control-C and Control-V, those are the same in Excel. But Excel has other ones that are like nifty and cool. So for example, we were talking about how I am down in the mystical, magical land of cell 1,048,573. Somehow I'm down here. This is not where I want to be. I want to be at the top. I can go up here and I can type in A1, or I can press the Control key and the Home button, and it'll take me right back to the top. It'll take me to the first cell, A1. If you want to go to the bottom of the spreadsheet, you can hit Control and your down arrow, and it'll take you to what it believes is the final cell in your spreadsheet. In this case, 1,048,576. I'm going to go back to the top. So it is possible to get lost in your spreadsheet. That's why the name box is important. And that's why I like to remember the command to get back to the top if I'm in a hurry. Now let's talk a little bit about, where'd my sheet go? There we go. How to enter in data, how to make it look good, where to put things, and then we'll talk about formulas. So in this case, you can see that I've made a different color, a different font. I've put like borders around it, things like that. And if you are wanting to format your spreadsheet, so instead of just typing in data like that and having it all look like that, if you want to make it so that it's a little bit more organized, you can change up in your ribbon a bunch of options. You can add borders. You can change the font. You can change the font size. You can change how it appears in a cell. For example, sometimes when you're writing something in a cell, it's too big to fit in that itty bitty rectangle, right? Wow. So I'm just gonna type a sentence. I love how Rachel's laughing at me. So you can see that this exceeds the part of the cell and it's kind of drifted into other cells. But when I click on this cell and I start adding information, it all of a sudden, all you can see is the quick. So I want people to be able to see all of this data. There are a couple things you can do. You can resize, you can wrap the text. So we're going to start first with resizing. So if you want to resize a column or a row, you can do that by going to the row that you are wanting to or the column that you are wanting to, and your cursor will change shape. So when I'm selecting cells, it's this cute little white plus sign kind of thing. I call it the selecting handle, the general select handle. Lets me select things. When I want to resize things, you'll see that it changes to like the wall with the 2 arrows. This is going to let you resize a whole row. So you can see I'm resizing it. Let's say I want to make this one real big. I can resize it. Maybe I want to resize the column. You'll know what you're doing based on what kind of cursor you are popping up with. So this is moving. This is just selecting things. Does that make sense? Your cursor is going to tell you what you can do. So if you're trying to make things bigger with this one, you're not going to. It's just going to select things for you. If I'm trying to select things, but I have this little handy guy, it's not going to let me select things. If I wanted to resize things, but it's this little handy guy, it's not going to let me do that. So I know I can resize because I see that I have the little wall with the 2 arrows. So now I can resize. Excel is one of a few programs that gives you different cursor kinds of things, and then you have to remember what they all do. So we've resized it, and now you can see the whole sentence, but it's off to the side and it looks quite terrible. And we want it to be in the center of the column. We want things centered. You can come up here and select that you want it centered. Let's say I resize the row, right? Well, now it's at the bottom and I want it in the center. You can also pick where you want it vertically as well in this cell. Maybe I want it at the very top all the way to the right. Maybe I want it to the left and all the way at the bottom. These are options that are going to be available to you up in that menu ribbon. I am the person that you'll send me a spreadsheet, and if things aren't formatted in a way that looks pretty to me, I will go in and do all of this. Do you have to do that in a spreadsheet? No, it can be whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be the ugliest spreadsheet, you can go find some papyrus font, change it to bright fluorescent yellow, have the text all smashed up. If that works for you, go for it. I try to make my spreadsheets best for people who have difficulty reading lots of text together, or they have trouble differentiating colors. I have problems differentiating certain numbers and colors and words and things. So I've learned how to format things so that I can read them better. The other thing that you can do, now that we've kind of changed all of this information, let's say I didn't mean to do that. You can go up here. Here's your undo and redo buttons on your ribbon. You just hit undo a bunch of times and it'll undo all the things that you did. If you undo too far, you can click redo and have it redo. I am going to make this back to being skinny again. Too skinny. Doot. So we're going to come down here and we're going to just type a lot of numbers. Okay, it's running on again. The other thing you can do instead of resizing everything is click wrap text, and it'll fit it into the size of the box that you have. So let's say my box is only this big. It'll start wrapping the text to try to fit in that box. Wrap text is really good for when you have to have columns of a specific size across a whole spreadsheet. Maybe whatever you're uploading it to won't let you do it otherwise. Wrap text is really good for that. Or if you have columns of a lot of different pieces of information. So maybe you have a column for people's names, but then you have a column with like an application number. And then you have a column with an address. Maybe you want to use wrap text on the address, but you want to resize for the phone number. It gives you a lot of options to play with. Now I'm going to pull something up over here and we're going to start getting into some more fun Excel related formulas and things. So we're gonna come off my gross page for a minute. We're going to go to a new page. We're going to go to black sheet, black sheet, heavy winning wool. We're going to come here and we're going to learn a little bit about formulas and things like that. So formulas are, as I said at the beginning, different kinds of values and mathematical equations and functions that will provide you with a specific output. The biggest example of this is when you're adding things up. So I want to know I've done 15 reports, 25 posters, 75 telephone calls, and 1,002 face-to-face meetings. That's a lot of face-to-face meetings. I could go whip out my phone or my calculator, type it all in, add it up, and then put the total, or I can use a formula to get that total. There is this cute little box that has the FX. It's a function box. If you click on that, you can insert a function in this way. So for example, sum, which is all of the numbers in a range of cells added up. You could do average. We're not going to get into VLOOKUP today because that can confuse people. You can do if statements. You can get a count. So it counts the number of cells in a range that actually have numbers in them. I'm going to use sum. And when you do it in this way, it's going to ask you to enter in your cell addresses. So I want to know from B1 through B4, and it'll do it for me. So I now know the sum of B1 and B4. This is not all of them. You can see that it added a comma because I only selected 2 cells. I selected B1, comma B4. So it only added B1 and B4. Oh, now I'm messing up the formula. Just ignore that. If I want to do the whole column, I'd have to select all of the cells. So I'd come in here, I'd enter sum, I'd hit next, and I'd want to do B1 through B4. You can enter those numbers in here, or, and this is how I do things, if you already know the formula that you want to use, you can just free type it. And now you can see it did B1 and then you use a colon to do the whole one through B4. There are a lot of formulas that you can use, functions that are available. The best way to learn them is to practice. So if you're not sure what a function is, so you're like, what does average do? You can have that little function box and it's going to give you a description of what that particular function does. So an average, down here it'll tell you it returns the average or the arithmetic mean. I'm sorry if it uses large words. My 10-year-old was upset with me because I had to explain to him what an arithmetic mean was. And if you have children, you know that conversation didn't go well. And he said, why make it so complicated? I don't know. So if you're not sure what it means, I recommend Googling the definition as well. Because believe me, sometimes I look at things and I'm like, I have no idea what any of that means. And the first place I go is Google. So we are in our box, our little box to do's and everything. And we've talked about some of the basics. My question is for you now. When I say an introduction to Excel, that can mean a lot of things. So is there something that you guys on this call want to know how to do in an Excel spreadsheet that you're not quite sure how to do? And if so, shout it out and we can walk through how to do it together. If not, we can talk about some other things. But I want to make sure that I'm curtailing this to the level that you guys are at. So I don't want to keep going with simplistic things if you guys are wanting more difficult questions. Any questions?
I kind of have a question, Faith.
Yeah.
What I've run into sometimes is I'm in an already created document, say it's a budget form.
Okay.
And I realized, so what's happened before is I've had to change a number or put in a different amount or something. What I end up with is I end up messing up all the functions from there down.
Okay.
To avoid doing that.
So it's going to depend on the form and what is there. So sometimes what'll happen is, and this has happened to me, where I will have created a spreadsheet and I will have put in a function, like I will have added a group of numbers. So I'll have done that. And someone will come in and they will change a number where it's a formula instead of a number. And then if that carries over to another spot and another spot and another spot, it can break the whole spreadsheet. Is that kind of what's happening to you, Chandra?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what you would want to do instead of updating and putting in a different number here, you'd want to update the pieces of the function. So if you know the breakdown of what number changed, you'd go in and change that number. If you had no other option but to come in here and change this to like 6,000, and then you had a different function later on that adds off of it, you'd have to go back and fix that function and in order to remedy it. I'm trying to think of what budget worksheet you would have been working on like that.
So it's like our the one for SSVF grant.
Okay.
And I did, I think, kind of figure out how to go in and change the function, but a couple of times I'm just not sure I've done it right. So
if you go in and you do a function and it's incorrect a lot, and it's incorrect in that you've written the function wrong. So if I do that, there's nothing there, it'll show up as 0. But let's say I do A1. You're gonna get these little error messages. It's usually a hashtag, number sign.
yeah, that's what I see.
That's what you see. Now, whenever you get an error like that, it's gonna pop up to you. If you mouse over it, it'll pop up what error exists. So this is an invalid name error. And these kinds of errors is because, for example, in this one, we know that a cell should have a letter for the column and a number for the row. This is 2 letters. So that doesn't exist and it can't create that formula. So it's telling you in this little error message here that it contains an unrecognized text in there somewhere. it gives you a couple of options. If you click on help on this error, it'll pull up the help that Excel has, and it'll provide you more information about what those errors are. So it'll give you the top reason why there's a name error, some important information, and it'll kind of explain to you how you might be able to fix it. It also refers you to some live Excel training that is super fun. The other thing you can do when you mouse over it and that error pops up, it'll show you this little dude here, which lets you ignore the error. I don't recommend doing that if you are 100% sure that that error should not be ignored. So in this case, we know that that error should not be ignored, so we don't want to ignore it, because then somebody else will come in the spreadsheet and be like, oh my God, there's an error and somebody ignored it. Now everything's broken. So for a name error, it's usually an easy fix. I can go in here and just change the name to a correct name, and ta-da, the error resolves itself. Usually heavy on the usually, when you have an error and you ask it to help you, it is able to put you in the right direction. However, some errors, not all errors are created equal. Let's just put it that way. Some errors are very confusing, especially the more complicated your spreadsheet is. Do you know, Chandra, what error you received? Was it the hashtag name or hashtag reference?
I think it was hashtag, but then it had, I can't remember now, but it had to do with the actual like function or the formula. Because I think what has happened is like when I had to take something, I put something under the wrong column and then switched it to the other column. And then so the additions or subtractions, I'm sorry, on the totals columns, that's where it all went off.
So you might see some common errors that'll look like this, where it's trying to replace a cell that no longer, or a page or a file that no longer is there in the correct place.
Yep.
And if that's the case, you have to find out which piece of it moved where and correct the formula to the updated location. These are the most common kinds of errors. I'm trying to see if it'll show you what it is.
Well, I think that's exactly what I saw was that. And I did go in to and kind of think I got it figured out to change that back, but I'm just wondering, like, if I need to go in and change a number, how can I avoid it messing it up like that? Or is there not a way to avoid that?
So when you changed the number, did you go in and retype the number, or did you move it? Did you take it from one column and move it to a different one?
I think I did like a copy or a cut
Okay.
paste kind of thing.
So that's why, because you moved the cell to a new cell instead of typing in the data and switching the cell number. So in this case, if I move this particular cell somewhere, my move handle looks like a little grabby hand. Your move handle might be two arrows that cross. It just depends on what version of Excel you're using, and if you're in the web version or the client. But mine's a little handy hand. So I can move this. In my formula, my formula is not there anymore. I forgot I typed over it. Let me move it back. Here's my little hand. That's the move handle, by the way. That little handy hand or the little cross, I call that the move handle. So if I move one of these, sometimes your formula will auto-correct itself. And sometimes it won't, because it's referencing a cell in another place of the document, and that's what messes it up. So for those instances, there are ways to avoid it. It just depends on what kind of information you're moving and replacing where. Sometimes it's better, instead of moving the cell, to change the number in the cell and then enter the information in a different cell. I will be providing you all a list of like errors and common ways to prevent and correct them, as well as some common shortcuts that'll help you when you're trying to update formulas.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
The other thing that you might encounter, I just realized that you guys will probably encounter this if you're working on budget worksheets or you're working on pretty much any template I've created where I don't want you to mess with something, is a locked cell. Locked cells or locked sheets won't allow you to change information in a specific area because we don't want you to change a formula. So in Chandra's case, the cells are unlocked so she can move things around and it can cause an error. To prevent people from doing that inadvertently, a lot of us lock certain parts of a spreadsheet. For example, if I come in here and I am futzing around and let's say I accidentally move this cell over here, that's because it isn't locked. If I were to lock the cell, you wouldn't be able to do anything in it. I'm going to pull up a different spreadsheet. You gotta give me a moment to do it so I can show you. Those of you in ND Run Help will be very familiar with these spreadsheets. There are pages on that spreadsheet that have cells that are locked and cells that are unlocked. Which is how I avoid, Chandra, people getting that #ref error, is because I don't let them move things. So that's a way that when somebody creates it, they can prevent other people from making errors. But it doesn't really help you when you've created an error. So on this spreadsheet, on this template, you'll see down here that if there is a cell or a sheet that is locked, it's going to have this cute little locky lock on it, letting you know that at least one cell in there isn't going to allow you to do stuff. If you'll notice on this one is unlocked. You won't see the little lock on it. So if I'm going to one of these locked sheets and I try to do something to a locked cell, so this cell is unlocked and you can see I can type in it freely, not a problem. I'm gonna change that to 0 because we don't want that. If I go down to this cell right here and I press 1, it is going to tell you that the sheet is protected and it can't be changed. And that's because I have this wacky formula up here, or this function up here, that's pulling information from a different sheet on here. So if I didn't lock this, someone could come and delete that, like over here. I could come over here and mess that up. I could delete it and just put 1. Now it's not using the function that I created. That is a common thing that happens where people will go and they'll write over a formula and then it'll cascade through a whole spreadsheet and the whole thing will start having errors. So that's why a lot of people lock them. If a cell is locked and you try to type, it'll come up with the error message saying, hey, you can't type here. I apologize. One moment. They're doing something with the water in the bathroom, and I don't know. I don't know if you guys could hear that noise, but so if the cell is locked and you need to enter data in there, you'd want to contact the person who created the spreadsheet to find out why they locked the cell. A lot of the reason for that is so you don't get those error messages. Other questions about Excel? If not, I'm going to show you some nifty commands that are going to be incredibly helpful for you when you're creating your own spreadsheets. The first one, oh, I don't need to do that. There we go. Okay, so if I need to get rid of a cell, there are a couple ways to do it. You could just click on it, click delete, and you can delete a row or a column or cell, or you can clear the contents of that cell. But I can be lazy. So often what I do is hit Control and then the minus key, and it'll pull up this delete menu and it can tell me what I want to do. So I'm deleting this. Am I deleting the entire row or the entire column? Or am I going to shift the cells that are below it up? Or am I going to shift the cells on the other side of it left? You can choose that when you right click on it and go to delete it. I prefer to, when I'm typing really fast, to hit Control- and select it this way. So for example, I want to delete this particular cell. I hit Control-, and then I want to shift the cells below it up. So I'm going to make sure Shift Cells Up is selected, click OK, and it'll move all the cells up. So now that my stuff is all matchy-matchy. My other one isn't working and I don't like it. Anyway. We've talked about copy and paste. When you're doing a lot of stuff in Excel, Control-C, Control-V, and Control-P, best friends. Control-P, print. P is in Papa. So Control-C, copy, Control-V, paste, Control-P, because people think when you press Control-P, it's going to paste instead of Control-V as in Victor. Control-P is going to print your spreadsheet. Control-V is going to paste things from one cell that you've copied to another, or from wherever you're copying from somewhere else. Control-C is copying. If you want to cut something, it's Control-X, and that'll allow you to cut something and move it somewhere else. I'm like, why is my spreadsheet all messed up now? So Control-P, print. Don't Control-P to try to paste, or you'll end up printing your spreadsheet. And some spreadsheets are 1 million cells long, and that is a lot of paper. A couple of the other shortcuts that I will give you guys, in addition to the copying, the pasting, the controlling, the homing, I have on my little doodly by here. So if you are trying to insert another cell, I'll see if I can get it to work. That didn't do what I wanted to do, did it? Control, Shift, and then the equal sign will allow you to insert a cell. And it lets you pick where you want to insert it. So if you want to insert a whole new row, you can click entire row and it'll put a whole new row right above the cell that you are inserting a cell. You can also insert cells by right clicking, going to insert, and selecting if you want to insert something. I'm not a mouse person. I don't like my mouse. So I do a lot of keyboard commands because it lets me move faster through Excel. In our last 10 minutes, I'm going to show you a couple of things. And then I would encourage you guys, I'm going to send you a bunch of stuff with shortcuts and things and a kind of little tutorial for how to do some more stuff. I would encourage you to play with Excel, and then we will be going into, I call it intermediate Excel, where we're going to talk about graphs and charts and data and stuff like that. This is just the basics, getting you comfortable. So you'll see that these guys over here have the lines, like there's light gray lines, and then these are the black lines. I have taken it upon myself. I didn't like how this looked, so I went and added a border around the cells. You are able to do that by coming up here to this little guy that says borders. And you can add borders to the bottom, to the top, to the left, to the right, all the way around it. If you have a group of cells, like I have these ones, I can do all cells each individually. I can just do the outside. I can make it really thick. I can do it 2 layers. I can just do the inside. So depending upon how you're formatting things, you can come out here and you can select. So I just want the inside of it to have these little borders on it. I can just select that. If I decide, oops, I put in borders, or there are borders in a spreadsheet that you got that you don't want anymore, you can just go up, and this one that's all dots takes away your borders. So in this case, I don't want these anymore. I can come up here, select all the dots, boom. You also have the option to draw your own borders, draw your own border grids, change the color, change the size. So for example, if I'm going to draw a border, I'm going to come here and I'm going to draw my border. Doot. And I can make it blue and draw a different border. I want to add the grid. So I'm going to draw a grid in blue. So there are a lot of different border options. When you're creating data, it can be hard to read, especially when you print it. It won't show the lines that you see in Excel. So when you print it, the only lines that are going to show up are going to be the lines that I created. So anything that you want to stand out with these borders, that's what you'll see. So it can be easier for people to read when they are looking at a printed copy. So for example, with my weird brain, these are difficult to read because there's no border around them differentiating which is which. If they have a border like this one does, it'll be easy for me to differentiate what's around it. I always recommend these when you are providing a bunch of data to somebody and you need to break it out by section. So in our little template over here that we were talking about, you'll see that I want to be able to identify that homeless counseling means this, and this is the number. So there's a border around it, and I've added some shading. You too can add shading simply by selecting like the fill that you want it to be. So I want it to be blue, I can fill it blue. If I want it to be yellow, it can be yellow. That is the basic way to fill. The other thing that you can do is create specific tables and styles. For example, you can go insert, and there's all sorts of stuff you can insert. You can draw in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't want to draw with touch. I don't have my touch screen on. But if I have a touch screen on my computer, I can draw on an Excel spreadsheet. I don't recommend doing that. It doesn't look as nice, but you can. You can format as a table. And you can pick a table that you want it to be. So maybe I want it to be an orange table. So I've made a table now. It's a very small table. I just broke it. So there are lots of things that you can do in Excel. As a beginner with Excel, the first three things that you're going to learn to do is identify where your active cell is and make sure that you can find it. And then you'll want to make sure that you're comfortable with the formatting tools that are available. So can you put your data in the center of the cell, the side of cell? Can you wrap your text? Those are going to be important. And then finally, if you are entering in formulas, you'll want to practice the formulas that you're using. And if you get an error, you'll want to review how to solve those errors. So that way, when you see them in the future, like that hashtag REF, you'll have an idea of what might have happened and how to fix it. The name error is often because you entered the name of a cell that doesn't exist or the name of a function that doesn't exist. So for that one, as you leave this training, you'll know that if you see an error that says hashtag name question mark, it is because there's some part of that that is a name that doesn't exist. So you've got 2 letters for a cell, or instead of some, you wrote Sam, or you meant to put P2 and you put PQ instead. My spreadsheet froze. Get mad at me. I'll go back to the spreadsheet. So we have about 5 minutes. Any questions?
I have a question, Faith, and I'm not sure how to word it, but I know I did it once, but I don't remember how. So apparently that's when I peaked in life. But when you have rows that have like, you know how you have like the first row in the spreadsheet that has like the titles of what each of the columns are?
Yep.
And then as you scroll down, you're like, wait, what was that one? how do you lock it so that the title thing stays when you scroll?
There's a couple of ways to do that. So some people will do it. So you're wanting to lock so that when you scroll, you still see this information, right?
Exactly, yes.
So there are a couple of ways. Some people format it as a table. It's not really locking the cell. It's that you can sort your data without moving, which is that format table. The other way is to lock it. And I haven't done it in a while. So see if I can remember how to do it. Where did it go? Okay, so under view, I had to find it. They moved it. I swear it used to be under like the insert. Under view, you're gonna have this thing called freeze panes. That's what you're doing. So you're freezing your panes. So for example, if it's your top row, they already provide you an option for you to freeze your top row. So you click freeze top row, and then when you scroll, you'll see the top row remains. If you want to freeze the first column, when you scroll over, it'll keep that first column. And if you want to freeze or unfreeze the top row of the first column, you can click unfreeze panes. And I wonder if it'll let me do it. No, I don't want to. If you select an area, so maybe you don't want to just do the top row, maybe you want to do the top 6 rows, you can select the area. I already did it, but you can select the area of the panes you want to freeze, select freeze panes, and now when you scroll, why didn't you do it? You should be able to do it so that it freezes the specific frames that you want to freeze. But it could be that I totally goofed up the spreadsheet. It's not wanting to let me do it. I will tell you that Microsoft did update their Outlook, their Office, or their Excel, their Microsoft. Some of the functions that did exist no longer exist. Same with Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word used to have a function where you can look at the pages separately. Now it's running unless you switch to reading mode. So right now it looks like, and it could be that Microsoft was having issues today because I have a whole list of errors that it was giving me. It might only allow you to freeze the first column and the first row now. Most of the time, that's what you want to freeze. The reason that you would want to freeze a column is like you have data that just continues on and on and on and on. And you've gone all the way down here and you don't know what data you were supposed to put in column E. So if you freeze that top row, and in this case, this isn't the top row, but if you freeze the top row and it has those specific pieces of information, when you go to enter it, you'd be able to know what data you're supposed to enter. The other thing that I love about the freezing panes is that if you freeze like the first column, say you are putting in someone's name and you're entering information about them, you won't forget which person you're entering the information about. Sometimes I enter information for people and I'm working on 50 people and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, am I in the right row for this person to enter their phone number? Or am I in the right row to enter this person's email address? Because I am freezing the pane and I can move it over, I'll still be able to see who that person is when I'm entering the data. That way you don't end up off on rows. Does that help? Yeah. So we have about a minute left. So I'm gonna let you guys know that I will be sending you all a cheat sheet that has some of this information, like I have on my little sticker guy, that you can print off, as well as some information about the different errors that you can use to resolve any errors that you might get. and then some information about some additional resources to learn more about more intermediate advanced Excel. We will be getting into more intermediate and advanced topics later on. This is just the very basics, what it is, how it works. So I hope that when we start diving in deeper into each of these programs, you guys will join to build on that knowledge as well. So with that, I will let you guys have a very happy rest of the Thursday. Go play with Excel. And if you have questions about Excel or any other programs that you're using or errors you're getting, feel free to email me and I will be happy to answer what I can and provide the resources that I can. So thank you and have a great Thursday. Today is not Friday, or Thursday. Have a great Thursday.